Bear with me. Okay. So we're obviously going to just go through the basics of how to get around Exo and hopefully show you a few things that you might not be aware of that might just make using Exo a little easier for you. So obviously we're going to cover off logging in, the various ways you can use settings in Exo to save screens and search screens the way that you prefer them to be, how to easily export information to Excel, how to use activities and reminders, how to access basic master file information, debtors, creditors, contacts, stock, and we'll add jobs into the mix today, and also how to run reports and use dashboards. That should give you a good starting point for Okay. So depending on what icons you have been given on your desktop to access Exo, they may be different colors. The latest version is slightly different. You'll have an icon on your desktop, you'll double click it, and the login screen will come up. Your live business, and if you have more than one company, there might be multiple in this list. So the Connect To field is the company you're connecting to. And I would point out that almost all of our customers have a utility that allows them to create test companies. So you might see your company name _ live and your company name _ test, for example. I'm logging in as the administrator, so I'm going to see everything, and obviously depending on the access that you might have, you may not see exactly the same options as me, but that's probably intentional.
What version of X Business is this that you are demonstrating on?
This version is the 2016.3 release, which we're still testing, so it's a brand new release. The most current previous release is 2016.3. So, sorry, 2016.2. So the color scheme and things have been updated in the version that you're seeing on this screen. Okay. So a couple of things I just wanted to point out. You can navigate around Exo in two ways. What most people use is the graphical menu or the business flow menu, which basically has buttons and icons which take you to the key function. So sales gives access to debtors, sales orders, invoicing, batch print, etc. Purchases is creditors, purchase orders through to receiving and paying. Stock, maintaining items, stock take, stock adjustments, bill of materials, etc. And then, depending on level of access, general ledger, which is chart of accounts, cash book, bank rec, BAS, journals, and end of month. The other way of navigating around Exo is through what we call the drop-down menus at the top, which gives you access to pretty much all the same stuff, but rather than through a graphical interface, just through a drop-down menu. Okay. From an ease of use perspective, things that are used a lot can be given a shortcut key, like F3 for debtors, F6 for a debtor's invoice, F4 for a sales order. That just means that function key on your keyboard will open that screen. I also just want to point out the options around making your screen different sizes. So you'll notice that I have not got my main Exo display maximized to fill up the whole screen. I can do that, but there's a good reason that I typically don't. And that is, if I want to multitask, and by multitask I mean have two different screens in Exo open at the same time, I need to have my main Exo menu not maximized. Okay. So if I've got my debtor account search open and then I want to minimize that and go and do a sales order, and then minimize that and go back to my debtor account. If I had my screen maximized, I wouldn't be able to see those minimized screens. They actually sit at the bottom of the screen down near your toolbar. So just as a matter of practice, it's best that you leave your main Exo menu in the size that it opens when you first log in and not maximize it, but you can maximize any other screen. The latest version, the one that I'm using, does allow you to Alt-Tab between the windows that you had open. Previous versions did not, so that's an improvement. For any screens that you do wish to have maximized all the time, I like to maximize most of the screens that I work in. It just gives me more real estate to work with. Most screens will open mid-size, medium-size. Any screen that you then maximize by clicking the box on the right-hand side, you can save it so it's always maximized every time you come back to it. And you do that by, at the very top of the screen, right-click, select the form position option, and then save. Then the next time I come back to that screen, it would be maximized. So it's something that I would encourage you to do if you prefer to work in screens that are maximized because you have more real estate to work in, more screen space, is just to right-click, form position, and save. The next thing I'll touch on is the use of Exo grids. And an Exo grid is pretty much any screen that looks a bit like a spreadsheet or a grid. So the example that you'll be seeing right now is the debtor account search. And the features that are available in an Exo grid relate to the layout of the display and the columns that are showing for you. Okay, so if you have an Exo grid and you position your mouse on any column heading and then right-click with your mouse, you'll have options to be able to modify your display. So, for example, the more commonly ones is if you select visible columns, you can then choose what columns you do or don't see in that list. Okay, so I want to add in the phone number and hide the second address field. That's what it does. And then if I right-click again and save, then the next time I come back to this screen, it will remember that setting. Other things that you can do, which are fairly self-evident, is you can set your column widths. Save that. You can put positions. That. And you can also sort the screen. So if you click on any column heading, for example, if I wanted to see my debtors in descending order by balance, then I've clicked the balance column twice, which shows that it's now descending. You can do a multi-sort, for example, by primary group, and then by name. Multiple sort, you basically click the column heading that does your first sort, then hold the Shift key down before you click the next one. So now it's doing kind of like Excel does, ascending order by primary group, and within each primary group, alphabetic by name. if I wanted to drop that to Excel, I can open Excel, get up a blank worksheet, right-click my column heading, copy to clipboard, paste that to Excel, update my column widths, and I've effectively got my debtors list in pretty much the exact order that I had it, with column headings. So that's a nice, easy way to just create merge lists, provided you've got the criteria that you want. And I will add that, particularly for debtors, which is commonly used for this purpose, you can enter into an advanced search mode and filter your list, for example.
No, I'm okay.
We want, say, customers in Sydney. So I'm going to say address 3. So in the debtors search, you have a simple and an advanced mode. So Exo grids are particularly useful throughout Exo. You'll see them in debtors, you'll see them in creditors, exactly the same layout. You'll see them in stock. With all the same options. I would point out that the columns that are available for you to see using the Select Visible Columns option can be changed by us or your system administrator and effectively add additional columns that aren't there out of the box. So you may already see some different columns, and I can tell you that the 2 old part number columns that I'm showing are custom fields that I've added into my demonstration company. So, for example, for stock, you may well want to put your sell price or prices into the search grid so that you don't have to double-click on a product to see what its price is. You could do similar with costs. Okay, exporting to Excel, there's various ways of doing that. So I've shown you copying from the search screen, and I'll also show you when we come to running reports, how you can run reports to Excel. There's a couple of global features that, depending on your business, you may or may not choose to use. So Exo has actually got quite a nice feature called Activities. And when you first log in, you'll probably be coming to the Task Scheduler screen in either Exo Business or Job Costing or CRM. They all have a similar interface. And this screen will show you a calendar. And that calendar really would be showing you any tasks or appointments that you're using within Exo, if you're using them. Task or appointment is an activity. Why activities are particularly useful is they can be linked to almost any record in Exo. So an activity can either be an appointment or a task, and if you're an Outlook user, and most people are, they're virtually the equivalent of an Outlook appointment or a task. Appointment being a meeting, task being something that needs to get done. When you create an activity, you can link it to any or all of a company, contact, job, sales order, opportunity if you have the CRM module installed, or not. So let's say I have a meeting with the project manager it's about a particular job or project that we're working on. The job code is searchable. That's going to look for job number, job description, status, customer. So we've got a fabrication job for Paul Holland Motors, and we need to have a meeting about that. So you can basically link that to that job, and then particularly the bottom part of the screen is very similar to Outlook in terms of how it works. You can assign that activity to yourself or multiple people. You can give it a priority, date, time. So that's then going to appear on the task scheduler as an appointment. What becomes useful is then the drill down, so you can actually drill into that job or whatever record this activity was linked to. I'll come back to what all of these tabs are for any of you that may not be familiar with job costing, but this is basically open the job. The job has an activities tab, and that's the same appointment that I've just made. So everything's cross-referenced, so you can drill into the activity from the job, into the job from the activity, etc. You can also use this like a shared calendar. So there is an option if you right-click on the column heading, which will be probably your name, and you've got a resources layout editor, which allows you to add other people that are users of Exo and pop them into the screen so that you can see what activities or tasks they may have for this day or this week. Click the calendar on the left to show only certain days you've selected, and you can really reallocate an activity or a task to somebody else or a different day or time just by dragging and dropping it, same as you can. Common uses for activities or tasks, debt collection is one. So say, for example, you are following up overdue debtors. You may go into their debtor account, look at what transactions they owe, make a phone call or send an email, and doing that, add a note about that, for example, but also then create an activity or reminder task. I don't really need to know what time it is. What specific time, just the day. I'm going to give them a call next Monday, and I want a reminder. So every master file record you see will have an activities tab, which contains any activity that's been associated with that company or job or contact. Okay. Debtors, creditors, contact, stock. We've already had a bit of a look at a debtor, so we'll look at a couple of other records, and you'll notice that Exo's quite consistent in how it's laid out with master file information. So any master file record, debtor, creditor, contact, you'll have a search screen or Exo grid like this. And then that master file record will have a series of tabs that are relevant to what it is that you're looking at. So in the case of a supplier or a customer, you've pretty much got their main information, code, name, postal delivery address, email, phone, fax. information that relates to their terms, for example, credit terms, currency, primary group, secondary group, turnover and balances information, pretty much the main stuff for a supplier in this case. You do have options of making suppliers private, and you also have the option of making debtors private, and that would mean that only certain people can see those records. So a use of that might be intercompany accounts or accounts that are only used by directors or managers, for example. You've then got your Details 2 tab. I won't go into detail about every field. It's basically stuff like how do they normally get paid, and if you're paying them by direct credit, what are their bank details, for example. A commonly misused or unknown field is this one. So for a creditor or a supplier, they have a default invoice mode, and it's either general ledger, GL, or stock. So if you're doing purchase orders or entering supplier invoices, it's worth making sure that you check the default invoice mode, because what it basically controls is when you enter a new invoice for that supplier, there is a mode field here. And that's just basically telling the screen, is it expecting that the user is going to be entering a stock code, or is it expecting that the user is going to be entering a general ledger code? So it's only a minor thing, but you know, it can be confusing to people who are entering, say, a supplier invoice for stock if they come into this field and do a search and it's giving them a list of the general ledger chart of accounts. So it can be changed on the screen at the time from general ledger to stock, and an invoice can actually be a little bit of both, but it's best to make sure that the default is what that supplier is actually used for. So if they're an overhead supplier like Telstra or the phone company or what have you, you'd leave it as general ledger, and if you buy inventory from them, you would make it stock. Customers and suppliers have a similar field on the Details 2 tab. For customers, it relates to how do they get sent their statements and invoices, and for suppliers, it's how do they get sent their remittances. So you will have a method, email, print, both or neither, and a contact. For a customer, it'll say statement contact and statement method. And that basically means that when they're sent a statement or remittance, it's going by that method, and it's going to this person. Where does this person come from? You have a contacts tab that you'll see against the debtor and a creditor, and one of those contacts would typically be the accounts contact. Create a generic contact called accounts department if you prefer, or you can make it an individual person, and the remittance will be sent to that person's email address. Okay? Same with debtors and their statements and invoices. That's just telling Exo what email address to use when it sends things out by email. Pretty much all master file records have a transactions tab, so debtors, creditors, stock, and transactions tabs can be laid out different ways. Firstly, you'll see that there is a tick box for group by period, a tick box for reverse sort, which basically just means descending order, and a tick box for show only unallocated. So if we're talking about debtors and creditors, where show only unallocated basically means only show me invoices that haven't been paid or allocated. And group by period is basically meaning that I've got a list of months at the top with the most current month first, and the bottom of the screen shows me the matching transactions for that period. So these periods are showing nothing, even though they do have totals in them, and that's because I've picked show only unallocated. If I want to see transactions from these prior months, even if they have been paid, then I just untick that box. I actually prefer just to have a flat grid that shows me all the transactions unallocated ones, so I normally untick group by period and have show only unallocated ticked, because that's usually the most relevant information. What's not paid. Debtors and creditors both have an orders tab, which is their list of in-progress purchase orders or sales orders, and you do have a tick box so that you can actually include their fully processed orders. So that's all drillable. You can go into any order, double-click it, shows you that purchase order. Same with debtors and their sales orders. Likewise, I might just go back to the transactions tab. In a debtor, creditor, stock item, any transaction on the transactions tab, you can right-click and you'll get a bunch of options. What you see would partly be dependent on your security and user profile, but things that are generally always going to be there is the ability to view and print that invoice. Edit the invoice may or may not be there. That's an optional setting that can be turned on or off. And if a transaction's been posted to the general ledger, it can't be edited anyway, which is the message I'm seeing. There's the ability to edit reference fields, which might mean that you can simply change the payment due date, for example. We've agreed to give this customer or an extra week or month to pay. You can actually change the due date of the transaction. So every transaction has a transaction date and a due date, and those are calculated based on the terms over here for that customer or supplier. It's pretty standard account stuff. For those of you that may not be aware, Exo has a feature called Extra Fields, and I'm just going to jump out of creditors so I can show you an example. In fact, I might jump into stock. So similar concepts with stock, Exo Grid, search screen, master file information with tabs. I'll come back to some of this specific to stock, but extra fields are basically the ability to create custom fields on virtually any record in the system that you might need to use to record additional information, and that might end up then being used for report or searching. So an extra field can just be a blank text field. It can be a drop-down list. It can be a tick box, a date, various things. You may or may not see anything there, but whatever is there is usually something that we've assisted with during the implementation. Okay, so just quickly for stock, a few key things. Every item, like any system, has a stock code and a description. Exo uses a feature called primary and secondary stock groups, which is a way of differentiating categories of items, which is often used from a reporting point of view, sales margin by category. It's often used for pricing, and it's also used for searching. Every item will have a main supplier, so the normal supplier you might buy that item from, and a unit of measure. The list of units of measures is able to be, it's not an out-of-the-box list. You can create whatever units of measure are relevant to your business. And items can be, if I look over on the right-hand side, you'll see supplier cost, last cost, average cost. Standard cost is optional. Items can be made inactive. And Exo has a differentiation between what you would call an inventory item that you track stock on hand of and a non-inventory item, which in Exo is called a lookup item. So if it is not ticked as lookup, then what you'd be expecting to see stock on hand notation screens at the bottom. If it's ticked as a lookup item, these would all say 0 because the system is not tracking stock, but you can still buy or sell it. Sell prices, so inventory items can have almost unlimited sell prices. I've only got 9 turned on. and they can be named anything you like. And then a customer is linked to a price level, which determines what price they get for particular items that you invoice to them. There's more advanced features with pricing where you can create specific pricing for specific customers or groups of pricing. And price items is basically the sell prices there. You can have multiple inventory locations if you're a business that deals with inventory. If you're a business that deals with jobs, you're likely going to have one work-in-progress location. That's basically where items sit if they're entered to a job, but not yet invoiced. Stock on hand is broken into physical, not for sale, committed, back order, incoming, the net of which is the free or available stock. Okay, so physical stock is what's physically on the shelf. Not for sale is not often used, but you can set a location as not being able to sell from, and it could be, for example, a faulty location where things might be returned to, but you would never sell it. Committed basically means any item for which a sales order is in the system that has not yet been processed. Back order is really a subset of that, and it's items where on entering the sales order, the system checked was there sufficient stock to be able to supply it. The answer was no, so those items were tagged as back order. And incoming is what's incoming on a purchase order that's not been received yet. And all of that information is available in more detail on the Orders tab, where you can see at the top of the screen all of the current sales orders for that item, for which customer, how many were ordered, how many have been supplied so far, what the status of that order is. At the bottom of the screen shows you purchase orders, what's been ordered, who's it been ordered from, when is it expected in, and what has been ordered, received, invoiced, etc. The middle part of the screen would only be populated if you're using a feature called Stock Transfer Request, and that's where if you had multiple warehouses and you were transferring from one to the other, that can go through a request process, which is similar to a sales order, purchase order, where location one dispatches the stock. That stock is then in transit, and when it's received at the next location, that transfer request is completed. Transactions for stock, very similar to the transactions tab for debtors and creditors. You've got slightly different options at the top, grouped by period we saw before, but for stock you can filter by warehouse. You can show all warehouses, and if you don't group by period, then you're basically going to see every transaction in descending order. So they'll also say movements in. So a positive entry is a movement into a warehouse, like a receipt, and obviously a movement out, a sales invoice, a sales order, a job that's been invoiced will be a negative. Pretty much every master file record in Exo also has tabs for notes, history notes, and documents. Notes are fairly self-explanatory. History notes also. They're just a note, but they're done in a more structured way where each note is a separate entry with a date, tracks the staff person, subject. And those are saved as individual records that can be used on reports or referenced later. Documents is any attachment for a stock item. Why would you use an attachment? Could be a material safety data sheet, something like that. How you attach documents, I'll show you the easiest way. Drag and drop. So you have a document, a folder. It doesn't matter what type of file that is. PDF, photo, what have you. Drag and drop. That will then pop a little box that asks you, do you want to save that document as a link, or do you want to save the file into the database? So the difference between the two is saving it as a link means this document is always going to live in this folder, and we're just creating a link to it. And if the document subsequently got moved or deleted, it would break it. It obviously saves less space saving things as a link because they were already on your network. But you can save documents into the database. It's a choice. The other way you can attach documents, and this applies throughout Exo, I'll show you a couple of other screens shortly, is dragging and dropping an email from your Outlook against the Documents tab. And you've also got on the toolbar the Document Manager that allows you to click New, browse to a document on your network and attach that. So several ways, but drag and drop's the easiest. I will touch on contacts very quickly because it's a bit of an underutilized feature. So every debtor creditor can have contacts. And you add a new contact by clicking the plus on the toolbar. You can associate an existing contact by clicking that little link button, and that will show you the list of contacts that are in there. Leaving aside from the contact that you see against your debtor or creditor, the contacts are also available basically from the contact search screen. And it can be used for things like creating marketing lists. So, for example, these are all my contacts, all my active contacts. If they're linked to a debtor or creditor, you would be seeing that there. The contact typically would inherit the postal, delivery, phone, fax from the company they're linked to. But they can also have marketing classes. So marketing classes can be things like what industry are they in, pretty much anything you like. So it's just a matter of picking what's relevant. And there's the option to set up marketing classes. So they're basically a blank list against which you can put categories. Any contact, if this option is ticked, once that record is saved, will push that contact into your Outlook address book. And if your phone is synced with your company email account, then it will also push it into your phone. So I actually use this, or we use this in our business all the time. So by default, we tick that. Having set up some contacts and some marketing classes, you then have the ability to filter your list using those marketing classes. So, for example, I want my retail clients, and I'm going to select them all and send them an email. Obviously, they need email addresses for that to work. So you can basically easily mine your list of contacts and copy and paste them to Excel. You can then use that to import into an email marketing system like MailChimp, or just use your standard email system to send them an email. You've also got the option to say, right, all of these contacts, put them in my Outlook address book. So that's probably more one for sales and marketing types, but anybody that deals with customers, obviously at your customer you're talking to a person, and that person is the contact. So call you on your mobile phone, and you've synced their contacts to your Outlook address book, then it will pop up and show you who's calling. Okay, running reports and looking at dashboards. So throughout Exo, there are two ways of accessing reports. If you use the graphical menus, there's a reports button. And that report button will be broken up into different report categories. And each report category will show you the list of reports that are available. The other way of accessing reports is from the drop-down menu. And equally, it has reports categories, but you'll notice that the list is longer. That's intentional. MYOB's thinking in doing that was that the reports available from the graphical menu are the more commonly used reports, and the reports available from the drop-down menu is all reports. I'll point out that Exo has its own inbuilt report writer, and it also has different menus for different people. So what you specifically see on these lists obviously would be a product of how your menu has been set up, and also any custom reports that, for example, we might have added in. So a lot of what we do is creating tailored or custom reports for businesses. And it also might be a smaller list because sometimes it's easier to leave people with just the reports that they're going to use rather than a very long list. So these may look slightly different when you're browsing them, but that's usually by design. Running a report, pretty straightforward. Pick the report. So let's look at a stock transaction listing. The first screen that comes up will say Clarity Report Parameters, and that is basically just the options that might be available in running this report. So depending on the report, this may have a small number or a lot of options. For example, date ranges, selections of stock categories, etc. This one looks like a very simple one. It's giving me the option to set a to product and a from product. As far as running the report goes, the choices you have is print, preview, export to file, show it in a grid, email it, or run it to Excel. Most commonly, people like to preview the report first, which will show you the report in your screen, the browsable report. From the preview, you can then print it anyway. You can export it to a file, usually a PDF. Can also be Excel. You can show the report results in a grid, copy and paste that grid to Excel. So one way of getting report data to Excel is preview the report, go to the grid tab, copy and paste. If you print the report, it's obviously going to print to your printer. A way of rerunning the report with different options. So to close a report and go back to where you were, you use the close button. If you want to rerun the report, click the little recycle option, and it'll take you back to the parameter screen. Okay? So that's worth remembering, because a lot of people can get frustrated if they click close. I'm now back to my main menu and I don't have the parameter screen. I've now got to go back and find that report and select it again. Whereas you use a little blue arrow, it takes you back to the parameter screen. If I were to look at a report with a few more options, Okay, so this is the same Clarity Report parameter screen, but you'll see there are many, many more parameters, and that's simply to provide the person running the report with different options to filter the data. So instead of dates, you can choose a range of months. Instead of a range of stock codes, you could choose a category of stock codes. If you want to choose any of these, you can see some of them are grayed out. And that's just done so that, for example, options that aren't used a lot are inactivated by default, but to make them available, you just tick the box and then choose what you want. When you use the preview method, you might find the report comes up quite zoomed in, 236%, so it sort of attempts to fit to the screen. These buttons in the middle allow you to shrink it so that you can see a whole page. Middle option is page width. The right-hand option is 100% view, which is usually, for me, probably what I use most. You can scroll page to page, of course, if it's a multi-page report. The double arrow takes you to the last page. Double arrow left takes you to the first page. And again, if I wanted to rerun that report, I'm not going to hit close, I'm going to hit recycle. Takes me back to that parameter screen. If I wanted to email that report directly to somebody, I need to have Microsoft Outlook running, which I don't on my local computer. But you just click the email option and it will run the report with the options you've selected and attach it to an email as a PDF. So commonly people waste a bit of time by previewing the report, PDFing it to somewhere on the desktop or wherever, and then creating an email and then attaching that PDF. You don't need to do that. You can just click the email button and it will do it for you. Okay, I'm going to quickly touch on dashboards. In fact, before I do, I will take you through a bit of basic job costing because we do have a few people on the session with jobs. So job costing is an integrated part of the system, but it is a separate module. By separate, I mean that it has its own screen and can have its own icon and login. So some people may specifically only log into the job costing icon. People that need access to both financials and jobs would have both. You'll see that it has exactly the same task scheduler layout as Exo Business does. And the main menu is really the Jobs tab, from which you can still access a lot of things we've already looked at, debtors, creditors, contacts, stock, and access basically searching for and setting up jobs. On the left-hand side, we've got the ability to book stock to jobs, enter timesheets, raise purchase orders, and the bill of materials option might be available also. So the only two things I'll just touch on is the ability to use the job search screen. It's quite a big Exo grid. There are many, many fields. So it would be something that you would definitely use your select visible columns on. And put things in the order that you want. So I've got master and sub-job code. I've got title, job type, job category, status, and then I've got quote value, job value, invoice value. There's also things like dates, due dates, who's the project manager, what have you. again, all the same ability to save those settings, copy to clipboard, etc. The top part is specific filters that are available, and you may see more. So if I put everything on there is a combination of job flags, statuses, types, categories, entered by, so person who created the job, resources that might be assigned to that job, and who the project manager is. So firstly, I can probably tell you that job flags are rarely used, so to tidy up the screen, you can hide that. Entered by is often not overly relevant. Nobody, or often people aren't overly interested in who created that job. They're more interested in who's managing it, so you can easily hide that. Job manager, type, status, category are the more useful ones. So for example, status, I only want to see jobs that are in progress or ready to invoice, and you'll get a filtered list. Of that, you might only want to see certain types of jobs, and these are all user definable. I only want to see maintenance and service jobs. Of that, I only want to see jobs that Dave has, and filter the list. So it's a pretty powerful search engine. And because that's easily copied to clipboard, pasted to Excel, it's an easy way to disseminate. A quick status on jobs, there's ample reports anyway, but it's an easy way to work through any job. Jobs are laid out similarly to everything else. There is a details tab and then multiple additional tabs. The details tab is the header record, if you like, of that job. You'll notice the one I've got here says it's a sub-job of a master job, and that's just a feature that's available for a larger project to be broken down into sections. Whether it's a sub-job or a master job, every job has its own code, its title, status, type, and a category. So status, type, category, those lists are created in consultation with our customer. The account is the customer or debtor. So that's a searchable list. The job manager is the project manager, and that's what we were filtering on before. Then you've got start, planned start, due date, actual complete date, bits of other deals, what branch or department that relate to, and how it's going to be invoiced. And then working left to right, we've got the ability to enter quote or budget information, which is basically a collation of items and or kits, each of which has a quantity, cost, sell, markup, margin, which shows the budget for that job from an hours, cost, and chargeable value perspective, as well as markup and margin. The end result of that job often then, and how it gets invoiced, is quite variable. Different businesses work different ways, but often there are timesheets being entered to a job. I'll just find a job that has some data. Okay, so timesheets for different people, different hours, that might go there, different costs, charge-out rates, etc. And those timesheets might be invoiced, or they might be incorporated into a progress claim. Cost is anything else, and that can be service charges like accommodation, it can be inventory parts that were used or charged out on that job, pretty much anything. And those costs can be issued from stock or purchased in via a purchase order. Okay, so purchases can be created from a job or linked to a job, and either way you'll have visibility of the status of each purchase order on each job. And then the invoice tab is where you would, the screen where you invoice the customer from, depending on your invoice method. Okay. result is a profit or loss on the job. So every job has an analysis tab that shows where that job is at numerically and graphically from a quote versus actual perspective, profitability perspective, broken up between costs and labour, and including or excluding sub-jobs. Depending on your access, some of these tabs can be hidden from certain users. So, for example, somebody who is an estimator and only does quotes can have access to the quote tab, but the timesheets, costs, invoice tab could all be hidden, for example. Likewise, we've got activities that we looked at before, so those link back to the task scheduler that we were working on. So that was really just intended to be a quick snapshot of some basics for job costing, is the ability to show and hide the filter options to make the screen a bit simpler, and use your Exo grid to put the information in an order that's more useful to you. You'd expect in job costing you'd have a lot of reports. There are standard reports that MYOB produce, and most of our customers also use a suite that we provide. Profitability reports, actuals to budget reports, work in progress reports, labour analysis, productivity. And lastly, I just want to touch on dashboards. So dashboards are a nice feature in Exo in that they're good for showing snapshot information about various things that can be drilled into. So where would you find dashboards? The most obvious place is under reports. There is an option called Exo Analytics. And Exo Analytics is basically a collection of dashboards. By default, those dashboards are laid out into about 6 different tabs. Just let it finish refreshing and I'll quickly walk you through what those are. This is a screen that I would maximise. So the tabs are sales, invoice list, order list, stock, finance, purchases. And there are 2 hidden tabs that can be created and have custom dashboards added to. So I've created one called Jobs and one called General Ledger. So why are dashboards useful is they're a quick snapshot of information and they're drillable. So for example, top 10 customers by year-to-date sales. Paul Holland Motors is my biggest customer. Why is he my biggest customer? I can drill into his account. That takes me to his debtor account record, which shows me that same turnover. And I can look at invoices, orders, jobs, CRM quotes or opportunities, and pretty much drill into any information I want, and then come back to the dashboard. Dashboards can be graphical like this, a chart. The chart style can change. Some dashboards are more like a grid, which has all the same options. The best way to work with dashboards is to lay them out in a way that's useful to you. So I'll show you how to do that. Any dashboard that you see on a grid already, if you hold down your left mouse button on the banner, you can then start dragging it around. And as soon as you do, you'll see these yellow arrows pop up. What they're basically asking you is, where do you want to position this dashboard? Top, bottom, right, left, over the top. So putting something over the top basically makes it a tab at the bottom of the screen. So rather than try to squeeze lots of little widgets into a small space, you can put them one on top of the other and just use tabs to get around. Once you've done that, there is a save button here, which basically saves what's called a layout, and that means these dashboards, this order, is how you can add more dashboards or remove dashboards. So to remove one, you click the X, and it will basically make it go away, and then you would resave it. If you want to add one, click the plus sign, browse through the list of existing dashboards, select the one you want. You then might resize it, and then position it where you want. Top, which makes it a tab down the bottom. Go back to my far left tab and saving it. So that's dashboards in analytics. One thing that I like to do a lot is just put dashboards in Exo Business or Job Costing more accessible to the area they relate to. So a couple of examples is if I deal with stock, I can add some widgets or dashboards relating to stock. So on my stock menu, I've got a low stock and a high stock. These are custom dashboards that we've created. Low stock. This one's called a pivot dashboard. So like an Excel pivot, you've got all the fields available. Depending on where you drag and drop them, you'll see different information. So I want to see low stock by warehouse. And if I tick on the details grid for warehouse 1, it's showing me the items with their supplier that are below their minimum. Okay, so stock on hand, min-max, and the shortage is the difference between the minimum and the stock on hand. So that's a nice widget. The advantage of having dashboards saved on your Exo menus is you don't really need to go to a different place to access them. So if I was, say, the credit manager, I would be wanting to see my debtor's age trial balance anytime I want. And having it as a dashboard means you can sort it descending order by overdue balance, and because it's drillable, drill straight to that account, look at the transactions, make a phone call or a follow-up email, and then carry on. So you can have dashboards throughout Exo on your menu, and it's really a matter of doing the same thing. Click the plus sign, select the dashboard or widget you would like to see. Creditors. Resize it a little if needed. Decide where you want to put it. I just like to do the on top of, which makes it another tab. Save my layer. So you will see, depending your list of accessible widgets, there are a bunch of standard ones that MYOB do, and we may have already done custom widgets for you, and with a little bit of SQL knowledge, you can do your own. And then they're made available to different users and different menus. So you may or may not see a list that's anything like this big, but they're a very powerful way of getting quick access to information. Alrighty. 11:06, that's about all I have time to cover today, so hopefully you found that useful. And obviously the intention is we're making life a little bit easier, showing some quick and easy to use features that are hopefully generally applicable to everybody. If you have any questions, fire away. I'll stay on the line for a minute or two. Otherwise, thanks for attending.
Yeah, just one question. You know how you said you can add extra fields, you can have custom fields. Can it be used for reports? Like, can you have a reports by custom fields?
Yes, you can.
So
that would work by using the report designer to add that field to a report. So, for example, if it was an existing report, like, let's say, no matter which one, a debtors age balances report.
Yes.
But on the debtors age balances report, you wanted to put an extra field that was against the debtor into that list. You would add that field using the Clarity Report Designer.
Right. Okay.
I should have pointed out at the beginning that the Exo Education Centre, which is on your Exo, has user guides for everything, including the Clarity Report Designer. It can be a bit technical, Clarity, I must say, but we do have a number of clients that are doing some basic forms and reports themselves. The most important thing to remember if you were looking to change an existing report is, I'll quickly show you this. All reports have a master reports folder and a custom reports folder. So if you want to take a standard report and change it, then you find it in the master reports folder, copy and paste it to the custom reports folder, and then modify it there. That just means if you accidentally break it, your original master report can be retrieved easily.
Right. And how did you access this?
Help about.
Yeah.
Shows you the folders where Exo is looking for things. One of
okay.
which is the master reports folder, custom reports folder.
Okay. Cool.
So if you're using the Clarity Report Designer, it will require you to access one of those folders. So if I open the Clarity Report Designer and go open, then basically what I need to do is find where the reports are. They're in the Common, Clarity, Custom Reports, Modifying, Custom Report. I want to get a master report and change it. So I want to change the Asset Depreciation Report, open it in the Master Reports folder, and save it into the Custom Reports folder.
Okay.
Before I make any changes.
Okay. Right.
Best to approach Clarity when you've got a bit of time, because there's a bit to it. But if you use the user guide, that's a good starting point.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for that.
No problem.
Hey, Al.
Yeah.
That's Jenny at Norship. You mentioned that you can actually add extra columns to the grid that aren't already there. How do you do that? So I'm looking at one of the girls has asked for an extra field to be put into the sub-job tab of the job costing.
Yep. You need to do it in Exo config.
Yep.
Opening it up now. You need to know what the name of the field is in the database.
Yep.
And the easiest way to check that is go to the Extra Fields tab.
Yep.
System, Extra Fields.
Yep.
Find that table. So you're probably talking about job cost header.
Yep.
And then you'll be able to see a list of all of the fields in that table.
Yeah.
Okay? You make a note of what the name of the field is.
Yep.
And then to add it into the search screen, you go to the Profiles tab.
Yep.
Then you search for extra. Just use extra. I've got extra J. I've got extra job costing search field.
Okay.
And that's where I type in the name of the field.
Okay.
And so down the bottom, it'll show you put in the database field name.
Yep.
Score percent complete. But then you can make it a user-friendly name by putting equals.
Yep.
Friendly name. And then if you want to put a second field in, you do comma, and then you type in your next field.
Okay.
Right? So
cool.
anything that you type into there, and because it's a user profile, you would have to either add it to the default user profile, which will add it to everybody's profile,
Yep.
or only add it to the user profile who wants to
That
see
you
it.
want, yeah. So when you're talking field, you just don't mean extra field. I can use any field.
Correct.
Like, for instance, if I want to put a type on the grid, job type on the grid, it's the same procedure. Yeah, cool. Okay,
So
got it.
the existing field, be it standard field or extra field,
Yep.
the only thing to be aware of with type is technically it's a lookup field. In the job header table, it's probably just going to have the number that represents the job type.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that will be an issue, won't it? Yeah, because they won't know.
Job type is already in the grid.
Are you sure? We couldn't find it the other day.
That's not good. Job type, it's already there. It's a standard field.
No. It's in the actual. We want to put it in the actual job costing screen where you look up sub jobs. At the moment, when you look at sub jobs, they want to find out by looking at that sub job whether it's a variation or a base because of the commercials. They can't. Yeah, they can't tell from the job number on the commercial.
I don't know that they're going to be able to do that, Jenny.
You can't then.
The sub jobs tab.
Yeah. Because with our commercial fields, the numbers don't actually reflect the type of job, whereas, in this particular, we want to add another column in this one.
Unfortunately, that's a screen that doesn't.
That doesn't. Okay, so I can do it for the major, like the search screens, but not for the individual job screens. Okay. No problem. Thought I'd ask.
Fair enough question.
That's it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Hello?
Yes, hello.
Hi. I have a quick question. I just wanted to check, when you were talking about when you're in the creditor screen and you said that there's the edit transaction date or due date, is that somewhere where, say like we've closed off November and then a week later we go, oh, look, there's these 3 invoices that should have been in November, but we don't want to reopen November. So we still want, so we'd put it in like the 1st of December, but we want it to age as though it was entered in November? Do you understand what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
An effective date rather than the date we enter it?
That can be done, I guess. There's a couple of options. So one is it probably needs a customised age trial balance report, because the standard aging reports use the period of the transaction to put in the aging bucket.
Yeah.
There are reports that use the due date instead. So, for example, if you had a October invoice that you didn't receive until November and you locked October, then you would enter that as a November date. Yeah. But you could change the due date so that you were still going to pay that supplier as if you'd received it in October.
Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do.
Yes. So you can certainly change the due date. That will mean that they'll get paid. So even if you've entered it as, so 30 days in the month, if you enter it as a November, it's going to say in December. But if it was really an October invoice, but you don't want to backdate it to October, you can say, well, I'm entering it as, 1st November, but payment due date is 30 November. Yeah. But then when you run a aged creditors report, you need to use the due date as the parameter for it rather than the period. Yes, and there may not be one out of the box, but so here's a little quick bit of training you may not have seen. There is a Clarity Report browser. So there are some reports that aren't on the menus. Okay. The Clarity Report browser allows you to basically have a look through everything and see if there is a age balances by due date. If you don't find one, we've already, I think, written one. So the Clarity Report browser, quickly reclassify all the reports, but it'll basically put them into categories like debtors, creditors, whatever.
Yep.
And then it'll show you a list of every possible report and a little PDF preview of what it looks like.
Cool.
Usually from the name you can tell if it's something close to what you're looking for. And if you don't find it, just give our help desk a call and we should be able to chase one down for you.
Cool.
But even leaving aside the creditor's age trial balance, if you've made the due date the correct due date, then when you're actually getting ready to pay that supplier, it's going to come up as ready to be paid on the due date that you've nominated. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the creditor payment processor, it works off due date, not invoice date. So,
okay.
The report's one thing, but as far as, making sure that, you do pay that supplier when they're expecting to be paid, if you've edited the due date to 30 November and you do a payment run 30 November, irrespective of what the aging report looks like, it's going to pick that invoice up as one that should be paid.
Okay. Cool.
So, you know how you did reclassify all reports?
Yes.
When I do that, I'm getting a warning. Are you sure you want to restore default category settings? This will reset all reports back to original categories.
Yes, you do want to do that.
Oh, so it's okay to do that?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Because otherwise they won't show in any categories. It's just for some reason you need to do it every time.
Oh, right.
So now that mine's finished, you can see I've actually got a very long list of creditor reports. It's actually longer than what's on the menu. Do I have one that says by due date? I'm not sure. Let's have a look.
So, can I ask you a question regarding fixed assets?
Yeah.
Can we just finish answering the question first?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, just looking, I'm not sure if there is a standard creditor's report by due date, but I'll give you one more option you can look at. Apart from the master reports, there's a hidden folder, not hidden, but one that's not necessarily evident, is the variations folder, which is kind of master reports that aren't used very much.
Right.
And that by default, if they're going to be used, they need to be moved from the variations folder and put in the master or custom reports folder.
Okay.
And it might
have any.
Doesn't look like there's any creditors report.
No.
Oh, here we go. No category if it doesn't know where to put it. Not sure. Do you want to give me your details and I'll email you some information about it? So it's a creditor's ATB by due date.
Yes, please.
Yep. Sorry, who am I talking to?
Wendy.
Yep.
Goody, GOODY, at norship.com.au.
Okay, hi Wendy.
Hi, Al.
Yeah, no problem.
Awesome,
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, cool.
Okay, and the question about fixed assets?
Yeah, just wanted to know, when we roll the fixed assets, like if you don't roll the fixed assets for the year, and you do it later on, when you roll it, can you run depreciation for each month after that, like July, August, September, to catch up with October? Will it do it?
I don't know the answer to that question. Our support guys, I'm sure, would.
Right.
There may be some corrections we need to do behind the scenes in order to make that happen.
Oh, okay.
So your asset register wasn't rolled at year end?
No, it wasn't. So
Okay.
you know how you have to roll to open the period?
Yes.
But then when you roll...
There's a separate roll for the asset register.
Yes.
At year end, yes.
Yes, so that was not done.
I'm not sure off the top of my head, but it is something that has occurred before, and I'm confident that our support guys would be able to help you sort it.
Okay. Yeah, not a problem.
It's a helpful
Yeah.
call, I'm sure.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's not a too major a thing.
Uh-huh.
It has come up a couple of times before for us.
Oh, cool.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
All right, if there's no further questions, I will end the webinar. Thank you, everybody, for attending.